Well, how are y'all? Awesome. So, James asked me beforehand, he goes, "Are you teaching tonight?" I kind of laughed. I was like, "No." He goes, "Are you leading the discussion?" I hope. So, that's kind of where things are at tonight. So, before we get rolling on the next person in our series, Crisis of Faith, can I have a volunteer to lead a prayer? Awesome. Thank you, John. Perfect. Do we have any prayer requests tonight? I think it kind of goes without saying. Country, environment, surroundings, people, foreign, domestic, all of those things, especially our missionaries. It's never awesome being overseas during any kind of change here at home. So let's keep them in mind. Anybody else? Okay. All right. Diane's brother has pneumonia. Anybody else? Molly? Definitely. That hits the teachers and admins at the schools really hard when they see that. Anybody else? All right, John.
Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for this opportunity to come before you and offer up this prayer. And we're thankful for the day you've given us. We're thankful for the rain and the much needed rain. And we're so thankful for that. We are thankful for the changing of the seasons. And we are also thankful for the many things that you have blessed us with in our lives. And we are thankful for to live in a country where we can have an election and we can freely vote and we can have many freedoms that we're not oppressed from our religious freedom and freedoms to voice our opinions. We're thankful for that. But dear Lord, we recognize that you are the true authority, sovereign God, that you are the overseer, creator of this world, and that you are in control of everything. And we're thankful for that. We're thankful that in the end we know what the result will be for those who have lived a Christian life, and that one day that these trials and things that we are concerned about now will no longer be concerns of ours. We're thankful for that and look forward to that day. We recognize that example that we lead and give and how we should do things to be truly more Christ-like, and the things that we say, the things that we outwardly express in our actions, and sometimes even maybe not in our actions, maybe things that we don't do. We pray that we can do better on those things, to be more conscious of people and the love that we should have for them, and the extending of grace to them in the way that they may have shortcomings like we know that we have in so many areas. And dear Lord, we're mindful of the people that were mentioned tonight. Diane's brother, as he's in the hospital in Illinois, we just pray for the right medicine and the right administration of that, and also with the doctors and other medical professionals that are involved in his care, that he can get to feeling better very quickly. And then also we are mindful of the people, the different kids and situation that Molly mentioned where child is missing. We just pray for his safe return. And we know that there's so many influences out there in our world today. We just pray for our children, pray for the parents the grandparents, the people that are often raising children. We just pray that we continue to look to you for guidance and understanding and support and encouragement. We're also mindful of the other people here tonight. We're thankful for each person here, thankful for the families that are here. We know that there are different situations, maybe things on our hearts tonight that are weighing heavy upon us, with different family members, different people we know that are facing difficult, maybe uphill battles. We know that some people are facing end-of-life situations with loved ones, and we just pray for them and that you continue to be our source of strength and encouragement. And we also just pray for the opportunities to help one another as a family, to lift one another up, and we're thankful that you've provided us that place and this opportunity to do those things. We are most thankful for your Son, Jesus, and in his name we pray. Amen.
All right, it's kind of tough sometimes to be known for something, right? So when Molly and I were in China, there was this, I guess, graduate that was always smiling. His name was Mark Jew. Nobody knew him by that name. They just called him Smiley Mark. So he was known for that. I think of Mark Harville, the pondering pharmacist. And, it can kind of be tough to be known for something, especially if you didn't give yourself that moniker. In the week of birthdays and aging this week, today I got an email that said, hey, this client wants you to do a video overlay, like a voice over this video, because our videographer did it. He's middle 20s, and he sounds too young. They're really going for the voice of an older person. Yeah, that's about where things are at today. It kind of made me think, going back to my childhood during VBSs, and where I grew up, they were like week-long ordeals. And so during this particular VBS, they were going through the 12 apostles. And so at the end of every little thing before we got up and sang Booster, Rooster, whatever, they would have kind of a guest dressed up. And so then the whole idea was they would have a conversation with the preacher, whoever's leading, that part, and then the kids would try to guess who they were. And so my dad actually dressed up, got up to the front, and just basically stood there. Preacher asked him questions, and he goes, I doubt it. I doubt it. I doubt it. None of us understood who he was talking about. But it kind of made me think tonight, what is doubt? As we talk about Thomas, typically he's referred to as doubting Thomas. But what is doubt? What is it? Uncertainty. What else? Lack of confidence. What else? Not trusting in something. Say that? Being afraid. Okay. What else? Everything I feel like y'all have said so far, I'm going to take as a negative. Do you view it that way? I feel like all of those have been negative attributes, negative descriptions. And what I want to do tonight is to kind of challenge us a little bit to not think of doubt in that way. That maybe it's not a negative, it's a positive, and we'll get there. I know that's a little bit of a stretch. But can doubt actually be just a genuine quest for truth versus all those negative things, feelings, shortcomings? All right, so let's look at John chapter 11 and verse 16 and start there tonight. So what I want to do is just kind of explore a little bit about Thomas, use him as an example. We're not really going to dive down into him as a person, or, this is not a biographical type of class. We're just going to use the primary description that most of us know to kind of just look at him and assess him just a little bit. So, to try to maybe understand a little bit of what most people would say was his crisis of faith. I want to challenge that a little bit. And maybe this wasn't a crisis of faith. It was just a transition point that we typically look at as a crisis. So can I get somebody to read John 11:16, please? Okay, so what's the context here? What's happening here? Who's he talking about? Who's he going with? And why is he saying die? Okay, so Lazarus has died and they're headed to Bethany. And so Thomas says, hey, let's go. But what happened before that? What is some of the rest of the context? The Jews have been trying to kill him. All right. And Lazarus is dead, right? Okay. So looking at it from that viewpoint, when he says, hey, let's go so we may die with him, what is he really saying? Are we talking about Lazarus? He's already dead, so who are they talking about dying? Jesus, because of the context of, hey, they're trying to kill him. Lazarus is dead. A lot of people, I've read some commentaries where they think they're talking about Lazarus. He's really not. He's talking about them, the apostles, him, Thomas, going with Jesus and dying with him. You know, I take that question or that comment as to be something that shows to me he's very deeply committed to Jesus. How many of us have ever told a friend, sometimes these are referred to as ride or die friends. How many have we ever told, hey, I would die for you? Has anybody ever said that to you? What would that mean to you? What if somebody told you, I would die for you? What does that mean to you? Shows love. Yeah, that's what it means to me. All right, so from that standpoint of this verse 16, what does the statement here from Thomas reveal about his character and his faith? Do it. Total commitment. What else? He loves Jesus. It's immense love. What else? Right. If you didn't hear that, perhaps there was some wanting from Thomas of not wanting Jesus to experience this himself. So he wanted to go with him and be with him. So lovingness, brotherly lovingness. How does knowing this aspect of Thomas influence our understanding of him a little bit more? Because I feel like sometimes we just jump straight into the doubting piece of him asking after Jesus is risen from the dead. But how does this really lay out, Thomas's mentality? Being deeply committed. Does that really have any air of doubt or any of those negative connotations? It feels like somebody that's very confident, maybe, and in their convictions. Molly?
I honestly had never thought about this until you were posing the question, but it makes me wonder if Thomas was more of that personality type to want to care for people. Sometimes there are people that are just really good at showing up when people need them to show up. And it makes me wonder if that was what he was like.
Maybe. I thought about that a little bit, about what the apostles were like. It really kind of got me, I guess, what's the show? Jenkins, The Chosen, kind of viewing them in that context. My takeaway on that was a lot, and I apologize for anything I'm about to say that may offend anybody. It felt like a lot like these guys were really kind of on the spectrum to some degree, because they were highly intelligent, You know, the fields that they were in kind of hits more of that personality type, which to me also hits this, I don't know how to interact with people kind of type. You know, so for Thomas to be overly caring and committed might be one of those things from somebody that has a hard time expressing that to be just another marker of how committed he was to Jesus and to what was going on. So I'm not saying that's the case, but the more I read about the apostles, you know, and the Chosen kind of hits that a little bit for me and really put it into context, and I think about my everyday, you know, I'm not one of those lovey-dovey, I want to listen and talk to you all day kind of people. I'm just not. That's not my personality. You know, I want to get it done, son, and be done, you know. That's just kind of where I hit. So to be able to sit and have a conversation with somebody and genuinely care and be empathetic sometimes is a struggle for me, you know. And then if I do that, you know, it's kind of one of those things to me. I'm like, dude, you're like one of my 5 circle people, you know. That's a big deal for me. All right, so who was Thomas? So he was somebody that was deeply committed. Yeah.
I'm not sure. I'm like Ollie said, haven't thought about this very much, but the context of the whole passage is they're having a conversation, and Jesus is saying, let's go there. In verse 8, it says, they said, a short while ago the Jews tried to stone you, and yet you are going back there. And so that's why Thomas says this. Mm-hmm. So it could be taken as a little bit of an encouragement, him encouraging the others, okay, he's going to go, let's go with him. Yeah. And so it's committed and all those things, but it's also encouraging them to say, let's all go.
Yeah. No, good reinforcement. All right, let's look at John chapter 14 next. John chapter 14 and verse 5. Actually, if I could get somebody just to read 1 through 6, please. John 14, 1 through 6.
My Father's house has many rooms. If that were not so, I would have told you that I am going there. I would have told you, I am going there to prepare a place for you. And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come back and take you to be with me, that you also may be where I am. You know the way to the place where I am going. Thomas said to him, Lord, we don't know where you're going, so how can we know the way? Jesus answered, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me.
So in verse 5, how can we know the way? What might Thomas have felt, why might he have felt compelled to ask that question? What's going on in his brain making him ask, how can we know the way? Or can we put that in today's context by example to better understand it?
This is what we're doing. And so Thomas is, I think, just confused.
Yeah, that's fair. I kind of think of it in one of those situations of like we're sitting around the table talking to people and they're like, all right, we're going to go get some pizza. Like, great, nobody's moving. And then you kind of kick back and relax and they're like, all right, let's go. You know, it's that uncertainty of what did you really mean by that? Yeah.
Basically, it looks to me like he's asking for better instructions. It looks to me like he said, maybe I missed something here. You need to elaborate on where we're going.
Mm-hmm. So I think maybe there's misunderstanding and he's just asking for clarity. That makes sense. Yep. What else? Any other thoughts?
The fact, you know, that, I think he was confused because I still don't think, I mean, they're still in the midst of trying to figure out really what he means by the kingdom. It is not until really after the resurrection that they understand really what it means. They're still battling this idea of, you know, this Messiah coming to reestablish an earthly kingdom. And so, yeah, I just think that he's like, wait a minute, what are you saying here? You're saying that you know where you're going, but we have no idea what you're talking about. It was just a development. So I think that, that goes along certainly with what you're saying is I'm looking for the truth. I'm trying to pay attention, but I'm not understanding what you're saying.
Yeah, and I think there's a choice that he makes there of, we all have those people that we know, you say something to them, they're like, yeah, I got that. I know what you're talking about. And then you have those that are really trying to understand, and you feel like they're wying you to death almost. So yeah, I do appreciate his asking, and I think it shows a little bit about his character and intent there. So let's move on to the next set. Let's look at John chapter 20. And then verses 24 and 25. If I could get somebody to read that as well. 24 and 25. John chapter 20.
Now Thomas, called Didymus, one of the 12, was not with the disciples when Jesus came. So the other disciples told him, "We have seen the Lord." But he said to them, "Unless I see the nail marks in his hands, and put my fingers where the nails were, and put my hand into his side, I will not believe it."
So what does that statement mean to you? Like, what's the state of mind if you're trying to put yourself in Thomas's shoes? This almost feels like a demand for physical proof. So what is he thinking? What's the purpose of that? I think this is where most people kind of bring up the doubt factor of this, right? But what's the purpose? Yeah. It's almost like, I view it as almost like a follow-up. Like, I know what's up, and you're saying this, but just prove it. I have that conversation with my kids all the time. They'll come up, Dad, and they'll tell me something. I'm like, show me. Like, no, we're not rolling with that. You're going to have to show me what's going on. Molly?
But it does make me wonder, was there something with the disciples that, if you're a caretaker personality type and a group of your friends come and say, "Hey, I just saw our great friend," and da-da-da-da-da, and there's that moment of going, why not me? Or how did I miss out on this? So maybe it's not as much as him focusing on, I don't know, Jesus being alive again. Maybe there's something here where he's kind of like, why did you guys see him and not me?
Yeah, so maybe a little bit of a jealousy, weakness kind of component.
I don't know if it's jealous as much as just a question. Like, I'm thinking about a particular family member of mine, and sometimes they can be
Hey, can we
incredibly...
clarify that's not me?
Right.
No, I'm just kidding.
I know, whole other thing. But sometimes they can literally be within like 20 minutes of our house, but we never know they're in town. So there's that kind of back moment of going, huh? Why didn't you call? Why didn't you stop by? Like, what's going on? But again, just a different perspective, maybe that maybe not have.
Well, I feel like so I can't. How many people in here do computer science related software engineering? Okay, awesome. So I can say this, and y'all aren't going to contradict me. I always have this feeling of like, anytime I'm talking to a client or we're working on a project, I ask a ton of questions, and I feel like sometimes it's almost that I feel like I'm trying to arrive at an answer by proof, by contradiction, or I'm really coming at it from an angle. They're like, "Why are you asking this question? I told you." And I'm like, "Well, I'm trying to figure out if you really mean what you mean." So it's less about, not believing them. It's more about like, I really want to make sure this is what's going on. So in my mind, that's more of my personality type and where I come from with it. And it's not a questioning somebody, why is an answer. That's all it is. It's not personal. I guess I'll say it that way.
There is also a level of, excuse me, a level of forcefulness to what he's saying. Because here, I believe this is the ESV, it's translated, I will never believe. And in the Greek, it uses a double negative, which even though that's a no-no in English, in Greek, that is a way of saying this is forceful. He is saying, this is what I need to ever believe. And I do understand, I agree with kind of where you're going with this of let's validate Thomas's need for evidence. I think a lot of the idea of him being, labeled as a doubter and that being a negative thing is the level of forcefulness he puts into it. And I think that's why Jesus later says, I'll give even more credit to those who didn't need to see that to believe.
Yeah.
I think that level of like staunchness to his disbelief is a big part of this.
Yeah. And I think, yes, thank you. And the direction I'm kind of going is like, how relatable is that to us? So have we ever been in a situation like that kind of echoes or parallels that at all? Does anybody want to share? Mark, I feel like you're going to tell us a good story. This is why we need 2 microphones, supposedly.
I feel like sometimes we try to put these guys on a different plane.
Mm-hmm.
They're just people. And so a guy comes to me and says, this person that you lived with for 3 years, you saw him die, and I just saw him alive. My first response would be, come on.
Yeah.
Or as Biden would say, come on, man. And he would be going, I need to see this myself.
Mm-hmm.
Now, well, I won't go ahead of you, but he was just a person. And he didn't have, I think it's very reasonable what he said. Now, and anyway.
No, I like that. Yeah, he's just a person. And in my mind, I think my takeaway from that is, I see this doubt, whether it be positive or negative, that had him really pushing his faith and reaffirming it, being something that says it's okay for me to do that too. When I do have questions, it's okay to ask. It's okay to question very staunchly hard, trying to get down at the root of it, that it's not necessarily, hey, I may be losing my faith. It's, hey, I really want to get back to where I know I need to be with it, maybe. Cliff?
Of course, what had happened was so far, well, it was just different from anything that they were acquainted with. They weren't acquainted with very many people getting crucified, dying, being buried, and then here they are walking around. It's just, that's a different story. And here we have to look at the situation. Who's telling him this, where he says this particular statement here? He's talking to the other disciples who have just spent some time with Jesus, and then they're telling him that thing. It may have sounded like they were pulling his leg, Listen, guys, you can tell me that all you want to, but unless I have my opportunity to put my fingers in the nail holes and my hand inside, the thing you're telling me, if I don't get to see this the wonderful thing you're telling me about, I'm not going to believe it.
Yeah. Like my middle schoolers would say, truth or cat? No, you got to prove it to me. Any other comments, JT?
God, Jesus had told him that's what was going to happen, so that's where the doubt comes from.
Yeah. JT, I think is next. Sorry, David. Need like some roller skates or something.
I think, you were talking about how is this relatable for our lives. I mean, how many people have we heard say, I wish I was alive back then to live the same time that Jesus did?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we have a lot of people back then who still didn't believe. But if you go further in this chapter, Jesus gives Thomas the evidence he's looking for. Jesus doesn't reprimand him. He says, hey, put your fingers in the holes in my hands, put your hand in the hole in my side. Jesus validates this and says, here is the evidence you need. And then he says, but even more blessed are the people who didn't need it. He didn't say that Thomas is cursed for needing evidence. To me, the issue is Thomas didn't understand Jesus' purpose. Similar to Peter and the other apostles, Thomas thought that Jesus was going to overthrow the Romans and, bring about the kingdom by blood and violence. And Jesus brought it about by love and self-sacrifice. And they needed to see his broken body, and they needed to know that he had truly died to understand that that's what the kingdom was about. But Jesus doesn't get upset with Thomas for having that doubt.
Yeah. I'm going to come back to verse 29 here in just a minute, that you kind of alluded to with that part about blessed are those who haven't seen. Before we get to that, let's look at verse 28 of chapter 20. If I could get somebody to read that. Cool. Thomas responded to him, my Lord and my God. So what is that declaration there? What's the purpose of that? Why does he say this? Like, what's the situation? What's the mindset? What just happened? Yeah. 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 No, I agree with that. So, yeah. I'm kind of freaked out at the whole, I kind of think of like Halloween, when you're going around and you're a kid and they're like, okay, let me take your hands, let me put it in this bowl, and it feels like, it's like Jell-O, and they're like, it's eyeballs. I kind of imagine that's where my brain goes, and I'm sorry. I kind of imagine that a little bit when, Jesus takes his hand and puts it in his side. It is kind of like, whoa, hold up, So, my Lord and my God, just an exclamation, kind of coming from any kind of doubt or questioning or wanting assurance to complete conviction. Again, as JT said earlier, with that exclamation point there, kind of just overemphasizing, that. All right. So let me ask this, just from a personal note. How can experiencing doubt or questioning your faith or reaffirming your faith lead to a stronger faith? Does anybody have a story or a personal experience they would like to share along those lines? I don't personally have a story. I do have a good friend that struggled with his faith during his 20s, and started questioning everything. Kind of turned away from the church. And then what really got him on the road to his belief again was empirical evidences. He went more of the route of apologetics from the standpoint of dinosaurs, and different references in the Bible to, logical, historical components. And that really kind of brought him back around to his faith. I've talked to other people that I don't know the name of the book. I'm just going to, it's something like Deconstructing Your Faith. And I've hit several friends 5 to 10 years younger than me, hit that book and start questioning, start dissecting every little thing. And it kind of makes them trail off. And what brings them back is, man, it doesn't make sense without God. The way that we're built, we need God. You talk about where we came from. Like a tree comes from the ground. It's got to have the ground to live. Where do we come from? Breath of God in the dirt. We've got to have God as part of that component to live. When we separate ourselves from that, we die. All right, so everybody's staring at me now. Awesome. All right, so let's go back to verse 29. Or look on forward to verse 29. Jesus said, because you have seen me, you have believed. Those who believe without seeing are blessed. So I like this passage because it gives me confirmation. I don't know that validation is a word I would use on this, of the recognition that today I have unique challenges that face me with not being able to see things. It kind of goes back to what JT was saying earlier, from the standpoint of not, that I guess maybe seeing is believing. Well, I can't see. How do I believe? What are the steps that kind of get me over those humps of somebody that thinks very empirically about things? Anybody have any thoughts on that? Whew, no, I can't. Thank you. I guess I'm kind of thinking about verse 29 from the standpoint of, okay, I'm somebody that I need to see to believe. I feel like I want to see to believe. How do I overcome that hump of needing those empirical evidences to have a strong faith in something that I may have never physically seen or felt when it comes, to my faith? I think JT, but okay.
I'm very similar to you in that I'm a very empirically minded person. I struggle with, things that I can't either see myself or logic into, and apologetics is very near to my heart. I think we have more evidence now of the existence of God and the life that Jesus lived than there ever has been before, except maybe the case of people who lived alongside Jesus. Because, especially with how far science has come and how much we know about the design and the structure of the human body, even down to an atomic level, there's just no way that that's an accident. And I know that's a very cliche thing to say as a Christian, but it's true. It's impossible that everything that exists came about by accident and that random chaos resulted in the complexity that is the human body. And that's one of the things that really strengthens my belief is there's just no way that this was all a fluke. Someone had to design this. From there, you can get into, who was that designer? Let's look at all the world religions and narrow it down. There had to be a designer.
Yeah, and I think access being another one of those things that we would have today to that information. Cliff, next. Sorry, Dave.
Snuck up on this side now. He's getting good at that. This thing you're talking about here, this verse, and our need to physically see things ourselves, and in some cases you can't see them, but we depend on that very same thing in every court by a jury, do we not? That has to be presented in a case where those people can envision the truth of something, or else they could never come up with a verdict.
No, that's fair. Any other thoughts or comments before I move on?
Yes. So this reminds me of, I guess, one of the Sunday mornings last couple of weeks talked about the rich man and Lazarus. And Lazarus was the beggar out in front of the gate within the sight of the rich man. The beggar dogs come up, licked his sores and all that. He dies and goes to heaven. The rich man dies and goes to hell. And he's looking across and he sees him, being taken care of. He's told when the rich man asks, would you send people to my brothers so they don't have to experience this? And he is told in turn, well, they wouldn't believe the prophets and all the things that have taken place in the scriptures. So my question is, I get that those who believe without seeing are blessed, and that that triggers me to go along with the other story. Because there would have been people who believed that would not in any way have had the chance that Thomas had to actually touch the evidence. And then we're today, I mean, we are to believe without having the opportunity to literally see Jesus standing up in front of us and that. So, I mean, I get this, and I get the point you're making, but where's faith? I mean, there's got to be faith in that picture somewhere, if any of that made sense.
Yeah, no, and that goes to the last verse that I want to take a look at, Hebrews 11:1. Now faith is confidence in things we hope for and assurance about things we do not see. And my kids have taught me a lot. And I kind of view this as one of these things that our oldest daughter does, and I'm trying to parallel this with the way that I'm thinking about this topic, is she is a daredevil. She's fearless. She'll go jump on a roof and pounce off, fall down, and jump right back up and be like, I'm okay. But then she hits a splinter, and I got to take her to the ER, a little bit. But she does this one thing that really, it used to frustrate me a lot. But now it's one of those things where when she does it, I just kind of laugh. I'm like, you're going to kind of get what you get for doing that. But she follows from in front. Does that make any sense? So we may decide, hey, we're going somewhere, and she just takes off. So she's leading us, but then she just keeps turning back to make sure she's going the right way. So she follows from in front. And I feel like sometimes with our faith, we do that, but we view that as a negative. But in my mind, using Thomas as an example, I see that as just, hey, I'm just making sure. It's not I'm questioning, I'm going to fall into the water, like Peter, but I'm just trying to make sure that I'm on the right path. It's that assurance or commitment. She's going to keep barreling forward. She's never going to come back, but she's going to keep looking back just to kind of make sure. Hopefully not like Lot's wife, but you know what I mean. So, all right. Let's see, what else? All right, so the last statement I'll just really make, and then we'll end class tonight, is more just Thomas from the standpoint of his doubt, and then maybe clarifying that, getting that assurance he needed, and then just kind of echoing that in our Christian walk from the standpoint of growth, resilience, and just the power in the search for truth that we have. If we search for that truth, we're going to find it in the scriptures, and then in our Christian brothers and sisters, and that ultimately is going to help us to have the resilience, the conviction, and the assurance that we need. So, any other final thoughts or questions or snarky comments? Or?
I think a lot of our walk
Mm-hmm.
spirit is unseen. And so I think instead of seeing it, I think believing is seeing.
Mm-hmm.
If you believe it's from God, if you believe it's the work of the Spirit, if you believe all that, then you will see the evidence that you need to see. If you don't ever believe it, you'll never see it. I don't believe the Holy Spirit is involved in my life, then you'll never see it.
Yeah, it's something you have to be looking for.
That's right.
Yeah.
So you see it because you're looking for it. You see it because you believe it.
Yeah.
So anyway.
So congregation we attended before called those glimpses of God. You kind of have to be looking for them in order for them to manifest and appear to you. But at the same time, they're there every day. We're just typically not looking. So yeah. All right. Thank you, Mark.